What made you want to start public speaking?
Oof. Well, it was very scary in the beginning. I didn't really want to do it. My desire to public speak more came from a desire to proclaim the gospel. So when I was in my early 20s, I had a breakup with a girl whom I really, really, really loved a lot. And I was totally and completely heartbroken. But God used that occasion in my life to draw me to himself and gave me an irresistible passion to share the gospel with people and a hunger for his word. And so my desire for public speaking came really because I couldn't keep my mouth shut about Jesus' love. Okay.
How did you get started?
So maybe I can talk about my first time public speaking. It was, again, in my early 20s, and my youth pastor had come up to me, and he asked me if I would be willing to address all of the youth. And so I did address all of the youth, and it went super, super well. I remember one image that I had in the sermon was about, I just had this picture, because I would walk to Douglas College every single day. And so as I'm walking and praying about what I should talk about, he gave me this picture of like a lake that was filled with black water. Can you see it? Black water. And I thought the human condition is like we're down at the bottom of that lake and we're helpless. We can't do anything. But what Jesus does is he jumps into that pool with us. He comes to the bottom of the lake, and then miraculously he starts to drink the water. And then once all the black water is gone, he gives us new life. So that was the first time. And then my youth pastor asked me a second time, and I got a little bit arrogant. And I didn't really prepare for it. I thought I could just wing it and have a couple of things to say. And I blanked out completely. And I wanted to crawl into a hole and die. Because I didn't have any notes in my pocket. I'm standing before people with nothing. And it was very, very embarrassing. So I made sure to prepare better. Anytime I get up, I'm very well prepared.
Have you ever been paid to speak? How much?
Oh, yes. I was paid to speak for the last 20 years. So as a pastor, you're paid to study and paid to preach every single week. So I think my longest stint preaching without a break was something like maybe 25 weeks in a row, where I spoke every single Sunday, in addition to doing other things pastors do. So, yeah. And how much? Well, my wage at Webster, New York I was paid $60,000 a year American. That was back in 2004. And I also lived in a parsonage for free. So that was good. So they give us our housing. When I'd go on the road, it depended on the generosity of the church. Sometimes they'd pay you a meager $60, $70, which isn't really a lot, because it could take hours and hours and hours and hours to prepare a sermon. Even if I'm using an old sermon, you have to prepare the night before to get it in your head if you're going to present well, and then get up early in the morning to get it in your head and if you're going to present well. So, but some other churches will pay up to $250 and then mileage on top of that.
What are the skills you have that make you a good speaker?
I think being able to be present to people is really important, especially nowadays. Being vulnerable is important. I think people connect with vulnerability. But I think above and beyond all things, it is being coherent, saying something clear, having a clear structure and movement of thought. One of the criticisms I have of a lot of preachers actually is that the sermon doesn't go anywhere. It kind of just circles down and around and around and around. They say the same thing over and over. I like it when there's a narrative structure to a message and you deal with a problem and you have a solution to the problem. I think that makes for more compelling listening. And also good illustrations are certainly helpful. Touch the heart and
I want to
mind.
do more speaking. What advice do you have for me?
I want to ask a follow-up question. What kind of speaking do you want to do? So let's imagine that you want to talk about your story, right? Is that the kind of speaking you would want to do? Or do you want to preach the gospel? Or both? Maybe you can use your story as a way of preaching the gospel. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, I think a lot of it comes in preparation and speaking about something that you have good knowledge of, that you're passionate about, and that's compelling for people to hear. I think that's some good advice that I can offer.
How would you define calling? Is speaking your calling?
Yeah, I think calling can be divided into two. I think we have a general calling from God, which is the calling to be truly human. So there's a phrase that we like to use sometimes. We say, oh, he's only human. Oh, she's only human. My response theologically is that is inaccurate. The problem is that we are not human enough. The calling of Jesus, the summons of Christ, is to be and become more fully and truly alive, which is to say more fully and truly human in the way that God always intended us. So that's the general calling that each and every one of us have, is to become what God has always wanted us to become. And then there's kind of another general calling, which is the cultural mandate. It's to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and take care of God's creation, work the garden kind of thing. There's a calling upon each one of us to share the gospel, right? But then specifically, how do you define calling, right? And do I feel called to ministry? Yes, I very much felt called to the specific task of being a pastor. And I think calling is confirmed by the people of God. So it's not only an internal calling. I might feel called to be a professional singer, but then my wife is going to say, and those who know me are going to say, you're okay, but you're not going to be a professional singer. We don't think God's calling you to that, right? So it accords with your gifting and opportunity and how the community says, yeah, I think you're going to be wonderful at that. Does that make sense?